G'day, it's Sunday. It is now the 10th of December 2023, and I'm going to continue with various series of broadcasts interrogating and exposing DCJ New South Wales. This is the second series. The first series is the Family Law Court. And of course, in Australia, these entities that literally DCJ in New South Wales is the Department of Communities and Justice. And it used to be called FACS, Family and Community Services, and in some quadrants still is. And it used to be called DOCS, the Department of Community Services. And Australia has the revolting and dubious distinction of having number one and number two states, Northern Territory and New South Wales, on earth per capita for the theft of children from their parents. Removal is only appropriate in extreme circumstances, and they are doing it so much that I've just been reading a Reconciliation Australia report about the removal of children, and 48% of all children in out-of-home care in Australia are Aboriginal, despite the fact that they comprise about 5%, 4 to 5% of the population, they said in this report. So I'm going to be reading things that, and this goes out specifically, if you are a journalist, I want you to know that one of the ways that these should be hot ticket stories, because if you are a journalist or a news or a content maker of any kind, or just a person with a caring and working intellect and heart in this country, in this nation of Australia, it should concern you greatly that you turn on the 6:30 news and see war crimes being committed by Israel, with the obliteration of a population in Palestine that is 50% under the age of 18, so they never got to vote for Hamas anyway. And of course, this was all caused, the obliteration of these innocent children, and men and women for that matter, because lots of them did not vote for Hamas, and you can only imagine the pressure that would be on in an environment like that if you were terrorised into voting for them, for example. So you'd hardly could kind of think it was... Anyway, staying with the topic. This was all caused from family members being stolen from other family members and or killed. So I've had 6 years of my daughter's life from the age she was 5 to 11 totally stolen and killed from my life. And I'm barely alive. And it's Sunday again. And boy, is it the day when you really feel it. I mean, you feel it every day, as I've said before, and you feel it every night. And it gives you nightmares. And you don't want to, as every other adult I've spoken to in this situation has assured me, they don't want to be alive because the pain is so hard to bear. You're going to have to give me a second just to collect myself, because particularly as it accelerates towards Christmas so soon and my birthday, it's really a hard... it's just getting harder and harder. I'm going to read some letters that are very revealing of key people who have made this situation happen, not the least of which it was the father of my youngest daughter, Ian Little, and the father of my eldest daughter. And of course, my daughter's not called Ian Little, and my eldest daughter is not called Tim Friedman. And these people, against all human rights law and against family law court orders, completely ruined my and my children's lives by taking their mother away from them after I'd had a nervous breakdown from many things that were discussed. And it was a nervous breakdown. It wasn't that I was a danger... There we go again. I hate this fucking rig. There you go. How far into it was that? Wow. Note to self. Go to JB Hi-Fi and beg for one of those stupid sticks. A rig. Anyone want to donate a professional rig? Podcast rig. Here we go. Excuse me. So I'm going to read to you things that... So far, the 21 or 22 episodes to date have covered off lots and lots of topics around the Family Law Court Act, but of course they've also covered off topics around the abuse of women and violence towards them that is verbal, mental and emotional, as well as physical. And of course, in the ultimate way, it is murder. And we have the outrageous situation that the last week of Parliament in Australia in December 2023 was spent hand-wringing, trying to find out how the government was going to suddenly procure about 150 GPS-monitored GPS satellite monitored ankle bracelets that can't be taken off and are fitted to criminals who've been allowed out of jail given that they've done their time, and the High Court made a ruling saying that indefinite detention is illegal. And of course the government has to now make law to try and work out what to do with those people who've served their time, gone back out into the community, and in 4 or 5 cases now, I think the case is, have reoffended. And I have covered off how I find it just revolting that the government can bring, of any stripe, Labor or Liberal, I'm no longer party partisan, I've voted Labor all my life, about how those governments can bring urgency to for people who've reoffended to the point where they stole some baggage off a carousel, one guy in Melbourne, and two counts of aggravated assault. But yet they can't find ankle bracelets for men who are literally threatening and harming and abusing women and children in the home. And then, of course, I've covered off the absurdity of not being able to have women for Australian Parliament to create a law which allows women to obtain admissible evidence when they're secretly filming and secretly documenting the abuse that they're suffering, because these cowardly pieces of shit, the men who do this to them, do it in the home, largely. They don't have any guts to do it out in public, because then they'd be exposed for who they are. So they're highly duplicitous narcissists. It's a hard one to say. But apparently not a hard one to do, because 6 women were murdered in South Australia alone last month, just in 1 month. 6. So the governments bring no urgency to this whatsoever. They scramble across, and again, letting a Keystone dickhead thug cop called Peter Dutton set the agenda as if they have to respond to this non-ideas, this person with not much going on here except a cynical exploitation of people's fears. And the dog whistle response that he is causing currently, like, oh, they're foreigners, they could rape and murder us again. Well, what about the very ones who are right next to you in your home doing it to women? But let's bring some urgency to that. So, as I'm not going to cover it off again, it's been 2 or 3 times now that I've covered off 5 key pieces of legislation. This is all written down in email as well. Sent to Rochelle White, the policy advisor for the Minister for Women federally, Katie Gallagher. Was also sent to my local politician who didn't want to give me the time of day, Alison Burns. And I mean over 3 months of asking as well, and with a whole raft of things going on around the Family Law Act itself, not just my case per se, which require urgent rectification on behalf of women and who are being abused by cunning and duplicitous and men. So I'm just going to read things now. I'm going to pivot towards the DCJ of New South Wales, the second largest entity on earth, not the second largest, they are bloody large. I'll phrase that properly. The second highest remover per capita on earth of children from mothers. I'm going to read you an interview that was given. So the last broadcast I did here in the last couple of days, it's hard not to weep at the end of it. I'm going to read you the evidence that was ignored by both Family Law Court. So I read you, yesterday I actually played you the evidence that was ignored by the Family Law Court from Lindy Sue Green. She graduated at Sydney Girls High, so she's not stupid. And Michelle Daly, that's with 1 L and an EY, and she is a senior New South Wales government bureaucrat, so she can't be that daft, you would think. And then, of course, there's me, and I'm obviously daft, to have put up with anything like that. But of course, when you have little children to house and no one will rent you a house because you don't have a job and you've got little children and there are 30 other people who they could rent it to, it doesn't become as easy. Why don't you just leave? Oh yeah, and go where, as my mother said. Miserable as she was for so much of her life, my father's domineering, overbearing, adulterous behaviour, porn lying around the house, etc. Merry Christmas, Dad. I see that when I type in your name and Natasha Farrow-Pryke's name, that you're still suing your daughter. Throw that in there. This one goes out, therefore, to all the people who are not going to be having any kind of a very Merry Christmas at all. So I'm going to read some, we're going to pivot from the Family Law Court to DCJ today. Oh, we're going to do it when my computer does what it's told. Just one moment. This is a little bit ironic. Sorry, I was on the wrong... Ooh. I was on the wrong, excuse me, dead air time. Not again, really. Sorry, just give me one moment here because this is really not doing what it's meant to do. Oh yeah, okay, so yesterday, on Saturday the 9th of December, I played live recordings to you of Michelle Daly and what she said. And I also got that put into Ausscript transcript. And so that was ignored by Federal Magistrate and Leanne Turner and Lucia Vardenega. And both of them should be immediately sacked from the Family Law Court because they are literally negligent. They have no business when they cannot identify nor the abuse of women, which is a pattern over a long period of time. And when I gave them 3 key pieces of evidence that were all admissible, 2 AVOs and a voicemail where the person knew that they were being recorded. And at this moment, why is it doing this? Just one moment, please. Suddenly my Google Drive doesn't want to open. No way. I will find it another way. Just wait. This is hilarious. Not. All right, I wasn't signed in. Okay, so again, we're going to start to look at DCJ New South Wales. So this one goes out to Paul O'Reilly. That's his name. He's ensconced himself in the shitfuckery of DCJ for a very long while now. He's a careerist. He's been there since graduating Macquarie University. You can look him up on LinkedIn. I did. And sorry, I've just got to confirm back on. Oh, you're there. So yesterday I read and showed and played to audiences actual evidence that was completely ignored by Leanne Turner, Federal Magistrate, who should be fired, and Lucia Vardenega. And so today I'm going to play and show you some key evidence that was ignored by DCJ for 3 years in the case of my son, who they took after I was falsely diagnosed and literally incarcerated. And again, there's that I have enacted court action that is underway to be suing the state of New South Wales Health for what they did, because I have had evidence from 4 mental health specialists, who are 3 psychiatrists and 1 psychologist, that they were completely incorrect. And their incorrectness in incarcerating me against my will for 4 weeks resulted in my son being taken. And the only reason that he was because my family was suing each other, and I was not talking to them at that point in time, and I hadn't been for a long while. So I didn't phone them to come and collect him, tragically, on the 10th of September 2018. And so moving along, there's Dr. Pace, Dr. Ranasinghe, Dr. Sturrock, they're all psychiatrists, and then my psychologist, Dr. Borenstein, and they've all said, no, this person is not psychotic or bipolar, they just literally are majorly clinically depressed and complex PTSD from the removal of their children and the deprivation of their children. And the deprivation happened because I've just seen one person come on here, but it doesn't say your name, so I can presume that you're not a friend of mine. Good. Push it around to lots of newsmakers, content makers, documentary makers, particularly journalists, investigative journalists, and push it around to policymakers particularly, because I intend to hang DCJ out to dry in the same way that they have destroyed my life. Because it wasn't good enough for them to not listen to the fact that my son had a perfectly loving mum and that I had run a daycare for 4 years, 50 hours a week, because I couldn't afford childcare in this nation, again, from any government. I told you yesterday, it wasn't good enough for them to take my son when my son had somewhere else to go, and he was placed initially with my second and then my youngest sister. And as I told you, tragically, yesterday, DCJ failed to inform me that my youngest sister then tried to give my son away to a stranger, a foster carer, despite being wealthy and having 4 boys of her own and 2 walk-in wardrobes and a house on the beach and a pool out the back. And you know the rich. Eat them. Definitely tax them first. Yeah, they tend to lack a heart. In my experience, it's the poor people who will help you the most. So I'm going to read some interviews that are going to be constitutive of a part of the body of the evidence against DCJ. So this interview was taken, and again, yesterday you'll see that I covered off some readings from the Children's Court in DCJ and what they did on the 22nd of February as they ruled 22nd of February 2021, as they ruled my son away until he was 18 into the care of the minister. They wouldn't allow the man they then placed him with, Ian Malcolm Calder Little, to be a guardian of or a parent of the child because I kept pointing out, you're joking, look at his police record, look at all the evidence that the family court has ignored. And you're going to, and he got my little baby girl as my mother was dying and as I was bleeding and as her stepbrother, my mum's stepbrother, my godfather, had murdered his wife after 40 years of marriage, Warren Rogers, in September 2016. Murdering his wife, Anne, and as I was losing my house and bleeding from a tumour in my cervix all at once. So you just cannot make up worse timing. And then I'm coming off looking a bit more emotional, and this psychopath who's abused 3 separate women, Lindy Green, Michelle Daly and me, is sitting there looking as cool as a cucumber, and the idiot, the negligent idiot, Lucia Vardenega, is sitting there going, not detecting it at all and thinking that he's the fine parent and I'm not. So that's what she advises Leanne Turner to do. And Leanne Turner, federal magistrate from Brisbane, suddenly in Sydney with no prior carriage of our matter whatsoever, just listens to that and only that, refuses aggressively. If you listen to the transcript or look at the transcript of the case, she aggressively refuses to look at all the evidence. This is Federal Magistrate Leanne Turner from Brisbane, suddenly parachuted down to Sydney when it should have been Dale Kemp. She ignores the evidence of the police record, even going, like, are you crazy? It's all here. I've got it on a USB stick. Here's her saying it, and here's an affidavit. Oh, but that's older than 1 year, Ms. Farrow-Pryke. I'm like, yeah, I know. So murder is still murder after 1 year. She's like, well, the rules of evidence are it has to be an affidavit given in the last year. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that. She's like, well, that's out. And I'm like, you're joking. It corroborates the police record. And she said, out, because she didn't want to hear, because she was listening to Lucia Vardenega. So she's got one coming for her as well, a nice big fat lawsuit. So they made the final ruling, as I explained yesterday, DCJ did, in the Woy Woy Children's Court only 3 weeks, almost to the day, before my son turned 12. And when my son turned 12, they were meant to listen to him and weight his opinion more heavily than they were. And so this is an interview. I wouldn't want to say that in the Middle East at the moment. This is an interview between Dennis John Chapman, who is a solicitor who lied that my child required care and protection because he then, of course, got retained by DCJ ongoingly for 5 years afterwards and knew he could see that he would be being retained until the child was 18. So he had absolute conflict of interests and falsely told myself and my father, who did not know what was going on because we'd never been in this situation before, that I had to concede to what's called establishment to establish that the child needed care. Well, I didn't, because I was sitting there, I'd had a nervous breakdown, and even withstanding the trauma and stress of what they put me through from that nervous breakdown, which is why Sydney Central Health, under legal director Blaise Lyons, who has palmed me off this week, would you believe, onto the same parasites, the lawyers whose legal firm is called Mackinson Dashpiche, and that's D''ASPICE, Mackinson with a K. And these fuckwits, they are parasitic. They do Sydney health area work. They specifically concentrate on defending the government from negligence claims. That's one of their largest clients. Not specifically, it's one of their largest clients. This is the same mob that Royal North Shore fobbed me off onto when, under Deb Wilcox, who was the previous director of Sydney area Northern Health, for Royal North Shore Hospital, after writing to her for 3 months, I got a meeting with you, and I've told you this before, she blows me off and says, oh, but I can put you on the Healthcare Complaints Commission list if you like. And I'm like, oh, wow, gee, thank you. Yeah, I believe I can email them myself, thanks. Yeah, but thanks for nothing, you asshole. And left. And then I said, I'll see you in NCAT. And I took them through the New South Wales Civil Administrative Tribunal. It's getting very boring, all this legal stuff. It does eat your soul, and it definitely eats your life. And when you're not being paid for it, boy, does it triply insult you and hurt you. So they put them on to fight me this week when over the last month I've been lodging a claim that's going to accelerate to a Supreme Court action in the same way that Mr. Friedman, Rounds and a couple of other people will be getting one any minute. To reignite in 2 cases against Northern Area Health for Royal North Shore Hospital, because they literally discharged me when I was bleeding to death, and my gyno said they never should have let you off the premises because you were 7.3 hemoglobin and you had a tumour right down in your cervix and you could have died. But instead they put me on an emergency surgery wait list that was 4 weeks long, ended up being 5 weeks before they actually called me. So 3 days later, at my own expense and then having to sell my house to do so, I paid for an emergency hysterectomy. To pay to save my life as the mother of 3 young children who'd been forced, when leaving Ian Little, who's a violent man and a dangerous man and a very, very constantly abusive man to women in the home where no one else can see him do it, but the partners and the children do, which is why he never should have got my daughter in the first place, which is why Leanne Turner and Lucia Vardanegra are being sued and pursued legally. This is the architecture of dispossession. So Mackinson to Aspie, so these professional parasite lawyers who use your money, that's your New South Wales taxpayer money, to defend against people like me, who say, well, I don't think that was right that since 4 other people have said I was falsely diagnosed and falsely incarcerated against my will for 4 weeks in Concord Mental Health Unit, I don't think that that's right that I lost my child and I've never got him back, and then you've re-traumatised me and caused a really serious long-term problem. That, given the other trauma that I'd had, I needed to not have that happen in order to recover from, but then you just totally kicked every last rung out from underneath me, literally kicked out the ladder and left me dangling off the side of a 50-storey building. In terms of what you would say to what that does to cause complex PTSD, and I'm going to send this to that journalist whose book's just come out about PTSD and how Reuters failed him as well. I think his name is Dean. Look him up. I'm going to send this one over to you if you're watching right now, Dean. This one goes out to you because I guess you would know what it's like, except so many of the people that I see with complex PTSD and depression have a partner and they have a job and they have a family, and I don't have any of those things. So this is, you don't know lonely, as the famous opening line of the great Don Walker, the Don. You don't know lonely until goes. You don't know it until you have literally lost your children and they were the last people left in your life because your family was suing each other. And you don't have a partner because he left in lockdown for a rich one. And you didn't build a career because you gave it to your children. And you did it by yourself to escape a violent man who was then awarded your children. So this is an interview that was made on the 2nd of February 2021. DCJ had this in their auspices. I'm going to be reading a couple of things I found when I subpoenaed their file because they're being sued. And twice in the district that has been unsuccessful because I've been unrepresented. So please go to my GoFundMe page and pour lots of money into it because I'm going to go to the Supreme. And the first question is, this is on the 2nd of February 2021, so it's literally 20 days exactly before they rule my child away from me. So Paul O'Reilly, Simone Check, you're the head honcho. Simone Check, if you look her up, under Kate Washington, who's now the current minister. Under the minister is a man called Michael Tidball. So this goes out to Michael Tidball, who used to be head of the New South Wales Law Association. So he should know his shit. And this should never have been happening on his watch. But before him, it was Michael Coutts-Trotter under the LNP's Natasha McLaren-Jones. And so so we have Kate Minister, the Washington for Facts, Docs, DCJ, call it what you will this year. So this goes out to you, Kate Washington, and your minions in the office there who keep pretending that I'm an unreasonable complainant. It goes out to your 2IC, under the minister is Michael Tidball, ex-Law Society New South Wales. It goes out to the person immediately under him, particularly Simone Check. You know, all these people are on six-figure incomes, massive, whopping incomes, and they're all entrenched in this hornet's nest, which really needs a very big shake-up, and it certainly needs oversight, and that's what it's getting right here. And so under Simone Check, there's 5 major managers, because you've got housing, of course, in the Department of Correction, DCJ, the Department of Communities and Justice. So you've got housing under communities, you've got youth justice, you've got juvenile, so you've got justice, housing, and then out-of-home care, or, you know, the entire regime of FACS, Family and Community Services. There's 5. I've forgotten the other 2. I can call it up. They've got a nice little diagram. Just Google it. You don't need to know the others. These are the ones that pertain to me. And heading for 25 years straight since he graduated Macquarie University, then I think he did law or social policy at Sydney Uni. You can look him up on LinkedIn. Paul O'Reilly at DCJ. Look him up, because this one goes out to you, Paul O'Reilly. You are the person who oversaw this damage, so it is you who should personally be sued as well. Don't think it can't be done, because judicial immunity doesn't even stand in the federal court anymore in Australia after the recent precedent in August this year of Wigney and Salvatore, where a judge was sued successfully in the Federal Circuit Court for $360,000. And I'll be doing that with Leanne Turner as well, but I've covered off the family court. So again, I've seen someone come on looking, I don't know who you are, and I hope that you are a policy advisor or a journalist who's going to put this around. I certainly hope you're Paul O'Reilly, who's Head of Care and Protection at DCJ, under Simone Check, who's under Michael Tidball, who's under Kate Washington, the Minister. And I've just covered that off. So literally 20 days before they gave my son kept him away from his mother until he's 18. This is the interview that was conducted with his so-called independent direct legal representative, Dennis Chapman of Gosford. And of course, Dennis lied to me that my son and my father was sitting beside me. We didn't know what we were doing. And we'd never been in this situation. And he said, oh, no, he definitely needs care and protection, because this is the establishment phase. You've kind of just got to get it out of the way. And he's this, like, old pale stale male sitting there in his suit that looks like it was, you know, bought in the 70s. His colleagues call him an old drunk. And he basically could see, lip smacking, that there was another, my son was 11, so to 18, there was another 7 years of work coming up on the event horizon for him, directly being paid by DCJ as a lawyer, right? So he lied to us. We didn't have to concede to this at all. And in fact, the family who got paid $260 million recently over in America, who sued the Welfare Agency of Florida plus sued the hospital, both of which I'm doing in my case. And I did this way before the Netflix documentary called Take Care of Maya came out. It's spelled M-A-Y-A. I did it long before that, so don't think I'm jumping on anyone's bandwagon. But they were awarded $261 million in damages. The mother hung herself. I've instructed I've got a formal will. It's been made. The children will get whatever is left of money from me when they are 21, so that none of their parents benefit from my early demise, because I've literally nearly had a stroke last Christmas when I found out that Ian Little was illegally relocating my daughter Madeline Little to a house without telling me the address of where my daughter and my son were going to sleep at night. And this is the sort of person that DCJ thinks should be given a child, over a mother who's got 50 hours a week for 4 years of experience running a federal government regulated family daycare service, and has worked as a professional nanny for barristers and lawyers, and 50 hours a week for 4 years running a federal government regulated daycare service. And so DCJ are thinking that this man, who's assaulted 3 women on the police record, literally chipping his wife's coccyx bone, all of which I covered off yesterday and read out and showed the affidavits and played the voicemails, that was all admissible and all ignored by the family court. So I have a nervous breakdown, and by the time, 10th of September 2018, 1.5 years after losing Madeline on the 28th of February 2017, I have a total nervous breakdown, first having ruled out that it's not Parkinson's, but it's just me fretting from having lost my little baby girl. And so by the time I get the right judge put back on, I'm in a facility being detained against reason. I don't know who's clicked the like there, but you can show your face if you want. If you're not a coward, show your face. If you are not a friend of mine already, that would make sense for why you press click and can't be seen, but get in contact with me by private message afterwards and we can sort it out. I hope you're a journalist or a policymaker or someone at the media department of facts, because this is where I send all this stuff so that they know that they're being watched over. So this is what the interview reads as. Question 1, what is your full name? And my son answers. Question 2, what is your date of birth? And my son says, 14th of the 3rd, 2009. I am 11 years of age. I am almost 12 years of age. I am almost 12 years of age. And the reason he says that is that he knows that when he's 12, they're going to be supposed to be listening to him more. So in retrospect, and I was absolutely horrifically conflicted on the day, because I really should have just said, look, I'd like this adjourned, Your Honour. I need to get high-level legal representation. It is unfair what you've done to me, because I've been stuck in a COVID border closure for 3 months without anybody as well, in a living hell down in Tasmania for that time as well, in COVID-19 number 1. And I would like this adjourned, because that would have adjourned it past the date that 3 weeks later when he turned 12. And maybe I could have argued that they should have listened to him. There were no guarantees, because there was a vicious little bitch called Mark Whelan, and he was the vicious little bitch. And he was out at defending as a solicitor out at Parramatta in this hornet's nest of parasites that suck your money to do this to perfectly loving parents like me. And overwhelmingly Aboriginal women who have been abused and can't afford housing affordability or childcare, and have been abused, so they finish them off by taking their children from them. Nearly half of all children in so-called out-of-home care are Aboriginal, and of course that alludes to the fact that they actually do have a home, don't they? So question number 3, who do you live with? And my son answers, I live with Ian Little and my half-sister. Question 4, how long have you lived with Mr. Little? Answer, 1 week. Sorry, I'm going to cry, because this reminds me of how he got there in the first place. My sister Elise Johnson tried to give him away to a stranger called Yale Michelle at Mona Vale. So question 5, prior to living with Mr. Little, who did you live with? Elise Johnson. We were living together at Avalon. And of course my son had the horrific experience of where he broke up from year 6 at Mona Vale Public, just pausing for a moment, with all of his friends. And unbeknownst to him, like all behind the scenes, Elise was quickly going, hurry up, have you got someone to get rid of this child, because I'm going to give him away to Yale if you don't, and can you organise it? Have you organised it yet? Has Ian said yes? And at the same time, Tim Friedman's been told, and he has, against all Article 9 UNESCO rights of the child law and against Section 60cc Family Law Court in the case P_SYC7427/2008, since my child was 3, despite being a sperm donor himself to 4 separate women. These people have all gone on a rugby-style pile-on on me after everything I've described to you in these emails below. And so they're all helping each other to avenge me. Go over to Instagram, look at the 1,700 videos and photos of all the love and happiness and music and light and laughter and care and education and tennis and ice skating and skiing and being at the beach. Go and have a look at it. There was nothing wrong with me as a mother at all. And I had that in writing from Elise Johnson, and from my father, Leslie John Farrow-Pryke, who's suing his own single mother sister, Natasha Farrow-Pryke, who's living in an abandoned house out the back of Tamworth. Because she couldn't afford housing either. She's a single mum, and her little boy, Spike Farrow-Pryke, who's just finished his first film with Rachel Griffiths. His dad seems to be dying of cancer. It doesn't seem to be getting better, the treatment. So this is a shout out to one of the nicest guys around, Rod Dry. How long did you live with Elise Johnson? And he answers, about 18 months. I went to her place in or about August 2019. No one told me any of this. I had to sue them to issue a subpoena to get their file. No one told me any of this. Question 7. Prior to living with Elise, who were you living with? And she answers Natasha Farrow-Pryke. Again, plug for her if you happen to be in the media. She's Kate Blanchett Great. She was trained at the same institution, NIDA. She was Kate in their final new production, Kiss Me Kate, by George Bernard Shaw. And she can sing and dance and act and should have been winning Tonys. She should have had an EGOT by now, an Emmy, a Grammy, a Tony, and whatever those other two, an Oscar. Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. She should have had an EGOT. But instead, what she got was rot, because we're in Australia and this is the shit that they feed you. Just eat your shit. Like comedian Steve Hughes said, eat your shit, eat your shit. And they're going to take your taxpayer money to do this shit. So he answers Natasha Farrow-Pryke. I was living with my mother prior to living with Natasha. And he says, I lived with Natasha for about 12 months. Question 8, are you having contact with your mother? So my son says, yes, I saw her in the most recent holidays over Christmas break. Well, that was bugger all. I saw her about 3 times in total in the Christmas break. Now, bear in mind, this is now February, so Christmas is already a blazing, this is the 2nd of February, so Christmas is already at least 6 weeks ago. So he's seen me 3 times 6 weeks ago at this stage, and I've only seen him once this year, and that was last weekend, the Opera House photos I posted there. So he says, yes, I saw her in the most recent holidays over Christmas break. I saw her 3 times in total. Doesn't say for how long either. None of them were overnight stays, lying down, cuddling, watching a film, giggling, laughing. Do you have phone contact with your mother? Question 9. And he answers, yes, I speak to mum about 3 times per week. I would like that to continue, he says. And then he said, then Dennis Chapman, the old drunk from Gosford, who lied to me that that I had to assent, which the Kowalskis never did in America in the case of Take Care of Maya. They never consented to establishment, which helped when they sued and helped them win $260 million. She hung herself on day 87 of the pain of being kept from her daughter through Thanksgiving and Christmas, even though she had a very loving husband and a very loving son. And you imagine what it's like for Aboriginal women. And she was a registered nurse. And so they falsely accused her of having Munchausen's via proxy syndrome, of making up that her daughter was suffering pain in order to get attention for herself. This is how fucked the system is to women. You know. So my son at question 9 answers, yes, I speak to mum about 3 times per week. I would like that to continue. Well, no, haven't heard from him more than twice all year, except I saw him last weekend. And the morons at DCJ, this one goes for you, Paul O'Reilly and Simone Chick and Kate Washington, because you know this is going on. They, after what's been done to my son's head under Ian Little, who's a vicious and nasty piece of work, as we've seen in evidence that was completely ignored by the Family Law Court, and that's on previous broadcasts, so go back and have a look. I'm not going to do it again. It's all played there, all of the voicemails that were admissible, the affidavits that were in print, it's all there in evidence. So you knew that I was a far superior parent on every metric. I even run a childcare service for 50 hours a week for 4 years. I hadn't assaulted my last 3 partners. I owned property, he didn't. I mean, which fucking planet are you on, DCJ? You deserve, I really hope that I am successful against you on behalf of all of the Aboriginal mothers you're traumatising as well, because if this can happen to someone who's got together enough to be able to go and do a bit of research and articulate their case, and it can happen to a loving mother with all of those references, not obligations, qualifications. Sorry, I'm tired. I don't sleep well, obviously. All of those qualifications, but you still do it to us, then you are practising prejudice. And it's despicable prejudice against Aboriginal women, and it's certainly prejudice against an educated, loving mother when there was no evidence that I wasn't. And I should have been given time to recover from the grotesque set of traumas that I had suffered that happened just before I lost my 5-year-old, which was I thought it was the ultimate knife in the guts, but then there was yet another death by 1,000 cuts, and it was them taking Augie. Sorry, I just stopped and got thrown because a message came onto my screen at the same time and I couldn't understand what it said. So yeah, I'm thinking like the worst thing that can ever happen is that I lose my little 5-year-old girl after years slaving in a fucking daycare service, wiping assholes and feeding non-lingual prelingual children in and out of cots, in and out of high care chairs, feeding them, writing down, notating how I'm complying with government regulation, the most precious cargo on earth for their children, for their parents, for anyone. It's a high-stress job, alone 50 hours a week, and I've come through with flying colours in order to leave a man who's abused me, and then the sperm donor gangs up. That man gets my 5-year-old as my mum dies, the murder goes down, and my reproductive system hemorrhages. And then these fuckwits gang up with each other, and Friedman and Ian Little, and they gang up and literally like, oh yeah, great, let's kick her when she's down. Now we can really exploit this one. She's had a nervous breakdown. Okay, we just won't give her daughters at all for years. For years. And it was 3 years with Alice. I did not even have her phone number until she was 16, and I waited on her 16th birthday, having not been invited to that either, outside of Newtown train station, bearing lovely gifts, which she genuinely did love. And of course, we stole 1 hour like secretive lovers, furtive lovers in a park. We got 1 hour in a park. And between that, I had the breakdown when she was 13, and Friedman, in his mendacity and in his vile hypocrisy, his nasty, harming ways, kept her from me and allowed her 20 minutes. This is in total violation of the family law court orders we had, saying she was meant to be with me every half school holidays and every second weekend from school on Friday to Sunday. She never wanted to go home to him and clung to my leg crying every time he came to pick her up, almost every time. And I would have to go, it's okay, darling, we'll see you on Friday. And I would work along with this fucking arsehole. Fucking 4 sperm donors to 3 women. What on earth? And then like shouting down $120 a week child support payments when he bragged that he won $300,000 on the horses in The Guardian in 2022 on one weekend. Tax-free. What a fuckwit. Mate, I'll see you in the... Because, of course, what that did to my daughter was totally destroy her at the time. And I've subpoenaed her record of her psychologist because her nanny phoned me up and told me what was happening to her. And so I confronted his mother, Barbara Friedman, about it and said, how dare you do this to my child? And you do know that he's only meant to be a sperm donor and he was never contributing anything more than $7,000 a year, so that's not going to buy me a house that barely feeds her, let alone pays the rent. So like, why is he trying to stop me from buying 71 Viron Road, Umina, which was my first house in 2008? And that's why the court case is P_SYC 727/2008, because he did it to me as a sperm donor from the age that she was 3. So for 15 years, I was dragged through by him and his QCs, who I vanquished while I was bleeding, when cross-examining a single expert Royal Commission psychiatrist called Dr. Carolyn Quadrio. Carolyn with a Y, Associate Professor, UNSW. Look her up. Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse. She was their witness. I cross-examined her while I was bleeding and I won Alice back. So he didn't like that, did he, Fredo, with his $250,000 QC spend? I'll tell you where you can jam your QCs. You've had it. You've had it legally now, because I'm not going to stop until justice is served for what you've done to me. And then he gets this partner who's meant to be an anthropologist, so she deals with Aboriginal women all the time, and she's meant to understand what the severing of children does, being removed from their parents. You would think, right? With Aboriginal children being taken and stolen generations from their mothers. So she jumps on. She hasn't got any children of her own. She wouldn't know what it's like to actually have children. Totally happy to oversee the 4 he's got to 3 separate people and then keep mine from me. Conspire with him. I won't tell you what my daughter called her when she worked out that as the de facto partner of Friedman, that woman would be sole beneficiary in the event that her 20-year-older partner, Friedman, died. Alice had a few swear words, let's put it that way. was funny. But I said, darling, don't speak like that about her. I thought you said that, you really liked her, and you don't talk like that about people. Don't do that in Mummy's house. So here's the great irony. I stood up for the very woman who inflicted mental harm on my daughter and definitely on myself, alongside Friedman, by defying Australian Federal Family Law Court orders because they had worked out that fucking nothing happens to people who defy family law court orders. They'd worked it out. So this is a shout out to the 10 men and women I know who I keep telling you about in my cohort alone who haven't seen their children for years and years and are so grief-stricken they describe being suicidal. How could you lose children? And I mean, look at it. If you can understand it on the nightly news, oh my God, they've stolen our relatives. Let's go and murder 2.5 million children on the Gaza Strip because they stole our relatives. Well, why can't you understand what I feel? They stole my relatives. I'm a perfectly loving mother and absolutely no consequence whatsoever. So there's question 9. Do you have contact with your mother? He says, yes, I speak to Mum about 3 times per week. And then he says, I would like that to continue. I hope you can read that. I can't see what you can read. And then question 10. If the court decides that you cannot live with your mother, what level of contact do you want with her? This is a crucial. And he says at least once per week. Sometimes I have other things to do. For example, I will be participating in sport this year and I must keep up my level of study, seeing that I will be in the first year high school this year. Well, he never got any routine sport that he plays at all. He does jiu-jitsu once a week. And so after trying to constantly, one of the many millions of things that this fuckwit Ian Little used to constantly berate me and try and harass and put you down, run you down. Lindy Green knows this. This is why she's being subpoenaed. She knows his MO, and he constantly is the most negative, putting down, like he bitches and moans and is revolting about everything. He literally ruins everything and everyone. He certainly has. That's what the evidence says. G'day, Penny Stockley. Hope you're watching. Yeah, he's a real... You dodged a bullet there, baby. Seriously, you did. So one of the many things he did to try and make me feel like shit is say, oh, well, why aren't they all enrolled in weekly Saturday sport? Like, why aren't they playing netball or soccer or anything? He hasn't done it once. My daughter's about to graduate this week, year 6. She's never, ever been enrolled out of school time in a sport, in team sport, ever. And neither has my son, ever. Not under DCJ and not under him. I would have. Because I can commit to somebody who's more important than me to get up on a Saturday morning and go, you need to be here by this time. Not like, I want to sleep in because I might have seen a band or played in one, like he plays in 3 separate bands. I believe it's down to 2 now. So question 10, he finishes off by saying, at least once per week. Sometimes I have other things to do. For example, I will be participating in sport this year and I must keep my level of study. Seeing that I will be in first year high school this year, I must keep my levels of study up. Now, this is the real killer. Question 11. Who do you wish to live with? And he answers, my mother. And then, why do you want to live with your mother? She is my mother and she loves me. I also love her very much. He did before he was placed with a dangerous and negligent, corrosive person who Tim Friedman supported called Ian Little. Because Tim did that to me as well. And so he helped Ian do it. And I found this out when I subpoenaed DCJ's files and read correspondence between Ian Little, Tim Friedman and various caseworkers. And I'm going to name those 13 caseworkers in a minute as well. So you can know that if they're your neighbour, you can tell them that I gave them that and that they've got it coming because they are going to be included in this court case because they neglected my child and myself by ignoring his wishes. Then he says, question 13, how did you go at school in 2020? And he says, in maths, English, writing, I got the top grades. In science, geography, I got the second highest award. I did not fail in any subjects. Then they say, question 14, what school did you attend in 2020? And he says, Motorvale Public School. And in question 15, what school are you enrolled in 2021? Well, Ian moved all the way over to Hurstville. So poor little Augie spent at the end of year 6, hoping that he was going to go down the road to Pittwater High or another high school alongside all of his Mona Vale public schoolmates, just like he'd been ripped from his best little friends up in Fegans Bay, and DCJ did not ever organise once, not even once, for him to see his best friends, Tim and James, ever again. Can you just get that for a moment? Like, if you are a so-called fucking care agency, you miserable pieces of shit, if you are a care agency, DCJ, you might want to start with actually caring. How about that? How about you care? What would a child want? Oh, they're best friends. Well, if you're going to steal them off their mother and totally upend them and rip them out of their everyday routine, and maybe you should keep contact with their friends so that they have something to hold on to. Nah. They're so fucking negligent at DCJ. They don't care about the children. They care about their fucking wages and their careers. They care about themselves, and they do not care to help women who can't afford housing or childcare. They don't care. This nation doesn't care about Aboriginal women going through this and Aboriginal children. Let's just get it straight. This nation doesn't care. What school are you enrolled in 2021? Georges River College at Hurstville, he says. He was the Ducks of that year with a Premier's Award and 6 medals at the end of it. His father died when he was 5. I brought him up alone. Yeah. So this is not a failing parent, obviously. No? On the evidence. Do you play a musical instrument? I play the piano. Well, that cost me $10,000. I have been playing the piano for a couple of years. Question 17. When you lived with your mother, did she assist you with your education? He answers yes. Of course. I did write the first climate change program in Australia and toured it around high schools in 1995, and I did work for a science organisation called Educate Me, and I went and did shows about bugs to primary school students, and all of my children are at the top of the state. The oldest 2 are, not Madeline, because she's been left with Ian Little, but she will be when I get her back, which is why you should go fund me at my Fund Me page. She's doing well, but she's not doing as well as they did under my care. And so he says, so he's asked at 17, when you lived with your mother, did she assist you with your education? He says yes. Question 18, I'm going to ask you some questions from the care plan amendment. Do you understand that? Yes. Now, a care plan is the thing that DCJ invent, and it's just a stock standard bog pro forma. They can upload their answers into these boxes, these categories that they have. I'm going to show you one in a minute. I'm going to read you the shit that they did, because I got their affidavit here. And I'm going to read you the sort of horse shit. These are like fantastically, these are 400 hours of supervised visits where people who've had 2 days training are procured, paid for by your money through Christian services like Anglicare, Wesley Mission, and the only qualifications that they have to have is a working with children check and 2 days training. And they're overseeing me, taking notes on my children and me, and whether I'm good enough for my children. I'm a professional nanny for barristers and I run a federal government daycare service. I mean, with a university degree in property, and all my children succeeding. Like, what part of this are people not starting to go, what the fuck about? This is what the fuck territory, isn't it? This is outrageous. So question 18, I'm going to ask you some questions from the care plan amendment. Do you understand that? Yes. Well, he doesn't know what the amendment is, so he just says, yes, he understands he's being asked a question. On question 19, on page 1 of the care plan amendment, contact for your mother is recommended. And this is how fucked they are, okay? This is how nasty, after they've got this child saying for 3 years that he wishes to come back home and live with his mother. And then I've been further traumatised being stuck in an interstate border closure in Tasmania where what was I going to do to get there? Swim over Bass Strait? Canoe? Kayak? I mean, can you swim over Bass Strait? I don't think you could. And a kayak was off the cards as well, even though I had 2 of those. So on page 1 of the care plan, facts are recommending that the minister hold parental responsibility for you. Do you understand? Oh, sorry, I didn't finish question 19. My bad. Cut that out. Edit. Start again. Question 19. On page 1 of the care plan amendment, contact for your mother is recommended at 1.5 hours per month. What do you want to say about that? Answer from my son. I do not agree with that level of contact. 1.5 hours per month.
after everything he'd said for 3 years. I want to be restored to my mother. They say, I do not agree with that level of contact. He says, I do not agree with that. And they offer 1.5 hours a fucking month. You know, just over half an hour a week for a little boy who's telling them he wants to come home to his loving mama. Excuse me. You miserable pieces of shit. DCJ New South Wales. Who the fuck do you think you are? You are traumatising Aboriginal women and children, and you certainly have completely traumatised me, which is why I will make you pay in the Supreme Court. And fuck you, Blaze Lyons. You're a friend of Lara Goodridge's, apparently. No offence to Lara. I looked you up. Fuck you for putting it through to lawyers instead of going, yeah, she's got some valid claims there. They were wrong at Concord. 4 other mental health professionals have all said that they were wrong. So let's just help this woman who's now on a pension from being so distraught and complex PTSD. Let's help her. No. Instead, what Blaze Lyons of Sydney Legal Area Health did was take your New South Wales taxpayer money with the full consent of Kate Washington, Minister, because I've given you lots of chances now, Ms Washington, to know this, and you are lying that I am an unfair complainant. And you too, Simone Sheck and Michael Tidball, but particularly Paul O'Reilly, Head of Care and Protection. He says, I do not agree with that level of contact. As stated above, if I cannot be restored to my mother, I want to see her once per week. Now, there it is. Screenshot it. I do not agree with that level of contact. As stated above, if I cannot be restored to my mother, I want to see her once per week. Once per week. At least, you would think. I mean, I've got to survive the whole 6 days in between, right? And I haven't seen Madeline at 11 years old since fucking Christmas Day. So I'm out of my mind with grief. And it's all because DCJ fucked up by taking my son. So Friedman and Little just thought that they'd kick me while I exploited, being the absolutely negligent parents that they are, because they can't see. Why would you want a little girl walking around the world as if she didn't have a loving mother when she's got a perfectly loving mother? And DCJ, why would you do that to a little boy? So that all your parasite, third-party procured parasites that hang off you for a living can be contractually obliged this year? I want a Royal Commission into DCJ. G'day, Neville. Neville? What? I'm doing a broadcast, just letting you know. Right. Yeah, so I'm just going to keep going. So I want a full Royal Commission into DCJ in the same way that the ex-Chief Justice of the Family Law Court, John Pascoe, Order of Australia, is calling for a Royal Commission into the Family Law Court. I want a Royal Commission into DCJ in all states and territories of New South Wales. I particularly want exposed their procurement contracts. Remember, I've been saying in previous broadcasts how one of the most invidious and evil things that is ruining the heart of this democracy is the very fundament of democracy, which is meant to be the transparency of tax. Because remember, poor people in France chopped off the rich people's heads with the guillotine when they worked out they'd been taxed to the back teeth, and it was all going to line the gold toilets of the palace. Not that they had them back then. Line the palace. And so we went, no, that's not a good enough tax spend. We can see where our money's going, and it's going over there. So we're going to get a mob, and we're going to run up to you. That you wouldn't get that with CCTV these days, would you? But we know where you live, and we're going to come up to you and find you and drag you down and chop off your heads so that you get the very distinct message that you are not to do this to us anymore. Well, I say that we need a Royal Commission into all public-private partnerships, PPPs, and we need a Royal Commission into all government procurement. All government procurements, local, state and federal, because under DCJ is a state government entity, obviously, and it procures goods and services, mainly the services of, it outsources its so-called care and supervision. And these people have not only got no training, certainly not as much as me, and certainly wouldn't even have had as many achievements made in their life as I have as a loving mother of children who are being kept from me by these assholes. When my own son has said he wished to be restored for 3 years straight and they've ignored him, and then he says, oh, well, 1.5 hours a month is not enough. I want to see her at least once a week, and that could be for the whole day, right? So there hasn't even been a time frame put on that. But these assholes
kept him from me completely, because Ian Little got into his Ian very little, nothing here, very little, nothing, gets into him, like in the same way that you can see on my page the words, I can't win, Mum. I either make my life miserable at home with them or I hurt you. And that was Marnie Round and Tim Friedman who did that to her. And her nanny told me what the result of that was. And that is despicable. So they'll be being sued as well, and they are being pursued properly. So he... then question 70 says, on page 1 of the Care Plan Amendment, DCJ are recommending that the Minister hold parental responsibility for you. Do you understand? And my son says, I know Mr Chapman has explained what parental responsibility means, but it's too much for me at this time. He doesn't really want to concede that he's actually going to be in the care of somebody he doesn't even know till he's 18. It doesn't make any sense to him. So then at question 21, it says, DCJ is showing your age at 10. You are currently 11 going on 12, is that correct? So Dennis Chapman gives a second chance for the court to hear, because this is in a court transcript, gives a second chance for the court to hear that my son is about to be 12, so they should be listening to him more. Because DCJ are such fuck-ups, they've listed my son's age as 10 to put before a magistrate, when in fact he's about to be 12. So that's how stupid they are. They've listed his age at 10, he's about to be 12. And he and his lawyer are trying to point out to the judge in these transcripts that he's about to be 12 because they're meant to weight his desires and his hopes and wants more heavily when he's 12. So he says, but you are currently 11 going on 12, is that correct? And my son says yes. And then the next question, 22, how old is your mother? And he replies, she's 50 years of age. Mum was born on the 23rd of the 12th, 70. And then they get it wrong again. They say, who is Alice Friedman? They're so stupid. They haven't worked out. It's Alice Farrow-Pryke. She's my half-sister. She's 15 years of age, turning 16 in April. So this is all going on, and they're all being kept from me, with these disgusting people wiping their hands and exploiting my suffering at the very moment that I needed more than anything, like all people suffering these sorts of things do, is love and support and care from the people that they love. So their answer, being that they are self-serving and malicious and dangerous, negligent people, Tim Friedman and Ian Little, and Marnie Round, going along with Tim Friedman, is to actually harm my children by having them walk around the world cut off completely from their mother, other than a 20-minute phone call without even FaceTime every 2 weeks. That's their answer to how to love your child. Just pretend that her mother doesn't exist and ignore the children's desire to be with their mother. So then they answer more questions. And then he says, they're suggesting, it's question 24, DCJ are suggesting an informal contact regime with Alice. Do you have any views about seeing her? And my son says, leave it informally. At question 25, they say, are you living with Madeline Little? And he says, yes, she's 9 years of age. And so this is literally, I have not seen her since. How do you get along with Maddie? And then he says, she's my sister. We get along as siblings do. And then they ask him who his half-sister is to his father, and he answers that question. And then he says, and then they say, how long since you've seen Kiki? And they say, I saw her at a football match at Avalon. She now lives in the Newtown area, apparently. This is what they said. How often would you like to see her? And then my son said, let us do it informally. So he doesn't want any strictures around that either. And then they say at question 30, what contact would you like with Natasha Farrow-Pryke? Bear in mind, Natasha spent virtually a year mothering him. And so he says, I could do it monthly, because he knows that Natasha's gone all the way out, forced by poverty, to live in an abandoned house at Tamworth, because she can't afford housing affordability as a single mother, on $500 a week you're meant to live on. I believe it's $550 with a rental payment. Question 31. Very telling. Do you want to see Mr. Timothy Friedman? I do not have a relationship with Mr. Friedman. I only see him when I see Alice. There's one stroke of luck, isn't it? Then he says, do you want to see Spike Farrow-Pryke? So this is his first cousin from my sister, Natasha, the great actor. And Spike is a great actor too. Natasha's NIDA trained. Spike's just, like I said before, done a film with Rachel Griffith, the great Australian actress. And then he says, I will see him when I see Natasha. And then question 33, getting to the end, is the penultimate question. It is proposed by DCJ that you will be living with Ian Little. This is the man that you've got all the information about on the screen down here and in previous broadcasts. Instead of me, his loving mother, who's bought 3 properties, run a federal government regulated family daycare service, owns property, has a uni degree, run a childcare service with glowing colours for 4 years, been a nanny to barristers with glowing colours, flying colours, and glowing reports, and who hasn't assaulted her last 3 partners like he has. And so these idiots in the New South Wales so-called care and protection system under DCJ, with your money, give my son to that man. And that man has them outside that window. And then they put him in an invidious... Again, Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry, that is the last time. Then they put him, a badge, would you believe? So much for that. That was holding up an angle on my phone and it keeps slipping on this little silly rig. I'll hold it. It is proposed by DCJ that you'll be living with Ian Little. What is your view about that proposition? Well, of course, he doesn't want to offend anyone. He's known Ian for a very long time. I do not play favourites, he says. He then says, I don't want to upset my mother, so if I cannot go home to my mother, I'm happy to live with Mr. Little. But he knows that I don't want him to live with Mr. Little because he's said for 3 years to them that he wants to live with me, and he's said to everyone else as well, and he's now saying it to his independent lawyer, direct legal representative. And then there's, is there anything you would like to tell the magistrate hearing this matter? The answer, Your Honour, all my information has been gathered over the past 3 years. I will leave the decision to where I live in the hands of the court. I do not want to upset anybody. Because, of course, if he reads that Ian's gets to read that he said he doesn't want to live with him, then that's not going to go very well for my son if he does have to live with him, is it? So the caseworkers, I'm going to read their names out. I hope you know some of these people. I'm going to start naming and shaming and literally trying to pull DCJ apart and interrogate them for what they're doing to people. I'm going to start up a group, and I'm not going to be put off by people who say, oh, you can't cover this because it's against the law. Well, bullshit, it's against the law. They're violating the child's rights to a meaningful relationship with their parent under UNESCO human rights conventions, okay? It's not. And you can always tell whistleblower stories by backlighting somebody into a silhouette and changing their voice. That is as old as the hills, so I don't buy it for a minute. You can cover this in documentary. G'day Screen Australia or Film Australia or anybody else out there with money who's a producer. You can do this. G'day anyone who's covering news and current affairs. You can do this. You just backlight them. Yeah, so the caseworkers were... The most mendacious and negligent one I've ever come across was Jacqueline Kelman, and she's up at Central Coast, and she, in front of Barbara Ramjam, who's a very great lawyer and was at one point appointed to be my guardian, said in a 4-way conversation with James Ricketson, Barbara Ramjam, my sister Natasha and I, that my son was merely telling me what I wanted to hear. And I thought, wow, you think you know my son better than me, and you're not even... that's fascinating. And under her, in her hornet's nest on the Central Coast, under Jacqueline Kellman, was Nikki 2Ks and I Strong. And then there was Marion Davis. And then there was Ben... I'll just get his name up. Just, sorry, one moment. I'll get his name up. Oh, is that kettle going to boil away?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. What was his name? Ben. You just go with a boiling kettle. It goes with a boiling face, doesn't it? I'll have to dig that one up. Ooh, no. No, I'll have to dig that one up. He'd been a cop. And he'd worked out that he'd rather not deal with the end result. He'd rather intervene at the beginning. So there was Marion Davis, Jacqueline Kilman, Nikki Strong. Then there was, they're currently down here in Wollongong is Alexandra Schilhabel, Schilhabel. And then her immediate superior is Christine Levita Seta, or Levita Seto, sorry, Laveeta hyphen Seto, Levita Seto, Christine Levita Seto. All of these people are constantly on leave when you email them as well. They've got to have the cushiest gigs on earth. And then there was Diane, sorry, I'll just call her name up down here as well. I think she ran. Diane Mitchell. Diane Mitchell at DCJ was another one of them. These are all the caseworkers. I want you to know, because DCJ is such a fucked institution, they can't even retain their own staff. They're hemorrhaging as badly as my cervix was, with a prolapsed submucosal fibroid in it, shilling out big levels of blood. I'm just going to put at DCJ in here, and that's going to be easy enough to find, you would think. All of it, please. Yeah, so how have we got so far? Marion Davis, Benjamin, someone whose name I'm about to collect, Nikki Strong, Jacqueline Kelman, Diane Mitchell, Alexandra Shilhabel, Christine Levita Seto, Diane, who I just said, what was it? That wasn't Richards, was it? Then up at Hurstville, these are the people who ignored my daughter's burnt leg when she could have died in a house fire. When she fell asleep, this is the first version of events she gave to me until her father coached her to say otherwise. And then the second event she gave me still said that he wasn't there. So, you know, he shouldn't be teaching people how to lie right as a child so that he avoids detection for his negligence. But those two women were called Maysa Hamden, Maysaa, and then Hamden, Ham for mother, Dan. And then her superior was Yvonne Raffaracci, Yvonne, Raffaracci, RAF for Fred, ARACI. And there's a few I've missed out at Monavel, but how many is that so far? Really need to, God, what a long list. There's been 12 in 5 years. Who's wrote? Oh, right. I just want to go back. Anyway, you get the picture. They can't even hold their own staff. They need a royal commission, and I think that's going to be enough for me today. I'm going to keep reading transcripts of these court cases, particularly the ruling in the New South Wales district when, as I said last week, their rationale for not giving my son back, even though he's asked to be given back for 3 years and has now changed his mind because he's been coached by you-know-who, and I've given you all the evidence for that below, is that I had not proposed a significant enough level of change. I said, well, he loves being down here, he loves the beach, he loves his new school, don't want to take him out of that, don't want to hurt Madeline and leave her alone, unprotected and undefended in the house with that thing. So I wouldn't want to change it, but I do want on principle that I am the authority in his care, and he and I am responsible for him, not the minister, and I want it such that I get to make some decisions in his life, and so he can be with me any time he wants. And they literally walk away and they come back with their ruling 2 weeks later declaring that I didn't propose significant enough change. So, boy, am I going to be proposing some far greater significance of change when I see you in the Supreme Court, DCJ, you miserable pieces of work. That's goodbye from me today. Bye.